Hey all, Kristian here with a quick note before we begin this episode. For Season 4, Paul and I are pleased to announce that we have our first show sponsors. Both of these companies are located here in Boone and have become important parts of the community here. Suga is a product manufacturing company, a design house, and a brand that makes durable, innovative gear here in Boone. They offer modular hip packs for mountain biking, coolers for your adventures, and my favorite, they're totes and mud mats. The mud mat is a perfect item for getting out of your muddy clothes after a long ride, but it's also good for that buddy who forgot to bring a change of clothes for the shuttle so they can ride back without soiling your seat. You can find out more at suga.us. That's TSUGA.US. Local Lion, Boone's first donut and coffee shop, are now our first donut sponsor. For over a decade, the Local Lion crew scratch-make donuts every morning at 3 a.m. to get you ready to conquer your mountain. Pair one of their lavender glazed donuts with a cup of their in-store roasted Ethiopian, and you're set for a great spring ride. Check them out at local.lion.com. For Paul and I, this podcast is a passion project in which we try to elevate what riders and coaches get out of their unique riding experiences. We are proud to be supported by companies who believe that excellence in quality is a valuable way forward. With this in mind, we have also launched our Patreon as a way for you, our listeners, to help support us in what we do. We have an exciting season started and are looking forward to bringing you top shelf content. Supporting us through the Patreon will help us grow this podcast and ultimately grow the mountain bike coaching community. You can find the link to all of our sponsors and the Patreon page in the show notes and our website. All right, on with the show.
3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Welcome to Donuts and Bikes, the mountain biking coaching podcast. Your hosts are Paul Howard and me, Kristian Jackson, and we're here to discuss the skills, techniques, and tactics we've used to train and mentor the riders and coaches we've worked with over the past 20 years.
Paul, we're back at it.
Back on the mic.
It's good to see you. It's good to be doing this again. It's been a while. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'm really excited too. It's this is a kind of a take 3 as well. We've tried to record a couple episodes to kick off season 4, but we weren't quite happy with the sound or whatever it was. So really good to be back now, and third time lucky, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been a while. So we've had a year or so off the mics, and I guess a lot of things that happened in between, and might be good for us to share a few of those things with our listeners.
Yeah. Let's kind of touch on last year a little bit, and then what our plans are for the podcast for this year. But last year was an interesting year. Personally and professionally, it was definitely highs and lows. It was a really tough year for both of us in some ways. We both went through a bunch of stuff, and the podcast is obviously a passion project of ours. So sadly, that was something that had to be shelved for a little bit whilst we kind of managed families and businesses and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was a tough year last year. But the highlights were cool. We had a great summer biking and had a bigger bike, a new size frame that I've never ridden an extra large downhill frame before. So that was cool. That we could probably do a whole podcast on that, actually, like sizing up and geometry and all that, because I had an awesome summer just personally for my own biking last summer. I think that definitely got me through it, and riding with the kids and traveling around. So as always, bikes kind of saved the day, because definitely some low times last year, but the bikes always bring it back. But yeah, what about you? Last year for you, that was definitely some ups and downs as well.
For sure. Same, like a lot of stuff on bikes, a lot of coaching, instruction, and training. And I get the biggest news from 2024 in Western North Carolina was the hurricane.
Yeah.
And it's
it was brutal.
Absolutely. Yeah. 6 months almost 6 months out, and we're still dealing with the impacts of it, and a lot of folks are going to be dealing with it for quite a while. And it's interesting to see how perspective on bikes and trails changed immediately following.
Yeah.
And how much hierarchy of needs was kind of put into the forefront.
Yeah.
But then it was also really important to see how important bikes and trails are to communities and to individuals, and to see a rallying around the need for access in a way that we've never seen before here. For listeners that are familiar with Western North Carolina, know that we have a lot of trails in Pisgah National Forest, and it's very rugged, mountainous, and tree covered, and just the number of trees down on trails, and how literally there were no trails to ride.
Yeah.
In Pisgah, in the weeks after, which is the first time ever that anyone's ever seen that, and the process of the community coming together to deal with that after the immediate needs were met was profound, and deeply appreciative to all the support that we've gotten from all over the world, really, and our local communities and officials, and the Forest Service and all of our partners has been amazing. So we're back at it now. We've got in my immediate zone here in Boone, we've almost got all of our trails, and it's been amazing conditions here recently.
Yeah.
Long, hard winter, and it's been wonderful to be on dirt.
Yeah,
sure.
Totally. Yeah, it's really cool how when those kind of events happen, and I think people you don't really get how much you appreciate something until you can't do it, and whether it's physically or mentally, but just that drive to get back on the bike, and I remember you telling me the community really coming together for dig days to try and get the trails back, and it more than anything, I think it was the community just mentally needed that outlet, right? That's why we all ride bikes. And for sure, it was similar for me last summer, just going through some challenges with the business and stuff. And it, your saving outlet is the bike. It's cool how much mountain biking does so much more for us than just the act of biking, right? It's the community, the mental health, the physical health, the connections. It's you don't realize how powerful something is until all of a sudden you can't do it, right?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely invigorating to have it again, and to have had that collective experience of having that recognition of how important it is.
Yeah,
everybody seems to be really stoked to be back out riding, and
they just appreciate it more, right?
Absolutely.
I feel that sometimes in the winter where we're forced to it because obviously it snows and then we can't ride. But it's been cool living in Pemberton, and I've been riding for the last 4 weeks actually, and just having that shorter winter, and it's it's as soon as the snow melts and you can ride again, you're just oh, this is so good. But so what are we doing for the podcast this season? You've got some good plans for us for season 4.
Yeah, having some time off has been good to think and project ahead and think about what we want to do, and definitely want to explore some storytelling with guests.
Yeah,
and bringing on some special folks to kind of help expand and elevate what we're doing here on the podcast, and definitely staying focused on coaching and instruction, and all the things that go along with that, but also bring in some more perspectives as well as to how that process engages with different aspects of the riding community.
Yeah,
racing community, and just kind of the larger industry as a whole. Yeah.
I'm excited for some of the coaches and athletes that we have in mind to bring on in guest spots, and mentors as well that are training and certifying other coaches. That's an element that we've talked about before, and yeah, I'm stoked to try and bring that in for season 4, and plus some of the topics that we've got planned, I think are going to be a lot of fun as well. And always that element of, it is geared towards both, our podcast has always been geared towards both riders and coaches, learning how to teach the sport or learning how to do the sport. And that's definitely the thread that we want to keep going along.
For sure. And I think that we're at a spot, we've talked about this quite a bit, but it feels like we're in a spot in coaching instruction that is an evolution of where we've been.
Yeah.
Any undertaking, especially something like mountain biking that is so skill and gear and terrain intensive, evolves over time. We look back to 30 years ago and things were very different for bikes as an example. But I think we're seeing now that the way that coaching and instruction are occurring is at a new place, and we're trying to grow and evolve with that. And that's kind of the vision for the podcast, is to help not just respond and report on that, but help actually drive a bit of that progression too.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I totally agree with that. And yeah, I'm excited. I think the other idea we have is some mini-sodes, if there's times where Kristian and I can't connect, and, we can fill in some of those gaps with some sort of mini-sodes where Kristian and I are going to kind of talk about a topic off the top of our head and something we've been coaching lately or working on lately or whatever it might be, whether it's bike setup or training instructors or working on a beginner program or whatever it might be. So we're going to start playing with some mini-sodes as well. Lots in the works, and hopefully we can pull it off.
For sure. Just wanted to give a shout out to our listeners and fans, and just say thank you for bearing with us and supporting us over this long radio silent stretch here. But we're excited to keep going. We've just been eating donuts for a year, and we're too fat to ride bikes now. But
lazy, yeah. We're going to turn it it's just going to be a donut podcast. Yeah. Maybe we should do that when we're a bit older. I'd gladly do that when I'm older. I'm just going to retire and we'll just turn it into purely a donut podcast.
Right. Well, speaking of evolution, last weekend I ran my first global syndicate mountain bike coaches intermediate instructor or intermediate coaches course.
Awesome.
Here in Boone with
exciting time.
A fantastic group of collegiate cyclists from Leeds McRae College who are studying outdoor industry, cycling industry kind of stuff. And I've been, as the listeners know, we've talked about, I've been coaching for a long time, and this is one of the most exciting courses that I've run personally. Awesome. Yeah. And I thought maybe Paul would segue for listeners to hear about what in the heck this global syndicate is.
Yeah. Big times, exciting times. I mean, I'll try and keep it short, but as our listeners probably know, I started PMBI in around 2006, 2007, professional mountain bike instructors certifications. And we ran those privately through my business, Zet Mountain Bike Camps. And that was 80% of our business was PMBI and training instructors and pouring my kind of heart and soul into establishing a professional instructor certification standard for mountain biking. And it got to a point, we were in East West Canada, the US, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and we'd got to a point where we felt like, we had the majority of the market share. We'd built that industry and that business, and we started working with Darren and Kelly from Endless Biking. They were running an awesome instructor course in North Vancouver as well, and they had some great tracking and recognition with their course as well. And the time came around 2015. We basically took PMBI and turned it into a non-profit association, and it became the PMBIA in 2015. And we ran that, and then in 2021, 22, the founders, so myself and my wife Shannon and Darren and Kelly, we stepped off the board. And so for the last few years, we haven't had any decision-making power or anything like that. We kind of transitioned to letting a volunteer board run it. And long story short, fast forward to just before Christmas, and some decisions were made that basically left, from our perspective, left the founders with a kind of a fork in the road. And not to sort of drag out the details too much, but like I said, long story short, we basically ended up having to make decisions, and out of that, the GSMBC was born, the Global Syndicate of Mountain Bike Coaches. So we're really excited. It was something, I think it goes without saying, you poured 20 plus years of your life into something. You don't ever expect it to change or to start something else after 20 years. But nevertheless, we're here, and it's a really exciting time for us. So the founders, most of the tech team, all the senior trainers from the previous organization are now, thankfully, we kind of kept the team together, and we're flying the GSMBC flag for 2025 and beyond. And it's a new chapter. Like you say, it's a new chapter. It's the next evolution. And we're so excited for the future, and there's a lot of information on our website. People can check it out, gsmbc.pro. But, long story short, one of the key driving forces and sort of goals that we have for 2025 and into the future is like you said earlier, being able to not just sort of respond and react, but to innovate and inspire and lead. And some of the ways that we're really doing that, like for me personally as the technical director or education director, person that's primarily responsible for creating the materials and the programs to run these coach education, these instructor training courses, the ability to do that really depends on things like, I've really paid a lot of attention and investment of time this winter to make sure we have the most cutting edge websites and learning management systems. And that sounds kind of dry, but I kind of think of it like, if you're a bike company and you've developed a new frame, but you can't sell it or you can't put it on your website or something like that, there's no point you developing the new frame, right? Or if you want to make modifications and you can't put out a press release, So my focus moving forward was like, how can we make sure if we're starting fresh, how can we set up a structure in the organization so that if we want to improve a course or come up with a new course or develop something, there's no boundaries. There's nothing holding us back. So it's cool. Like the new website, I edited this. One of my friends just gave me a bit of feedback yesterday. I was out shopping, jumped on my phone, I edited it in the lineup to the groceries. And that's how easy it is to edit the website and build that website. And same for our learning management system. I've always wanted to do like online workshops that people do before the course and like try and make it as inclusive and like comprehensive as possible. So I've been looking at this new learning management system now, and it's really cool. Like there's videos, podcasts, quizzes, reading materials, slides that make these kind of pre-course workshops really interactive. And so that's exciting. And then just ideas that we have about, making memberships optional instead of mandatory, trying to make courses as good as we can to improve that coach education sort of standard and certification, but as accessible as possible. So if there's ways, we're really looking at ways to make the courses more affordable, and having memberships as an option is a big part of that. And then other things like webinars and online coach education programs so that if people can't travel, they can still get access to that training between courses or in addition to courses or in addition to their certifications. So yeah, it's definitely a fork in the road, but we're excited for the future and the whole team together. And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, you and I have worked together for a decade or more, and many of the team have. And to me, the true value behind what we do and who we are is it's the team, it's the people. And thankfully we're all still together. We're just, wearing a different t-shirt, as I keep saying. And now we're just excited for the future and this new opportunity. So exciting times. And a big part of it, I think, is, people have probably seen the word coaches a lot, and that gets us into a bit of the topic today of like coaching versus instructing, and what are the similarities, what are the differences, and I think that could be a kind of a nice segue for the topic today, because it seems quite poignant. I think like the last few years, I've really felt like, what are we doing as mountain bike coaches / mountain bike instructors? Like, is there a difference? And if there is a difference, does it matter? And if so, why does it matter? And how does that help us paint a different light on things? And what might be the outcomes to the industry as a whole if we shine a light more on one of them than the other one? So, yeah, long story, kind of short, not very short, but yeah. Crazy times, but exciting times. It's awesome, and I'm so grateful to everyone that's come on this journey with us, and for everyone's support, both internally with the crew that we've worked with for a long time, but also externally, just the response we've had on social media and through all the businesses and bike parks and companies that we've talked to. The support's been overwhelming, so we're truly grateful for that. Thanks for listening, everyone. Kristian and I are stoked to be doing this podcast. If you're enjoying the show and want to support us, please take a moment to share our podcast with your friends, families, colleagues, or neighbors by letting them know where they can find us and listen for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or wherever they get their podcasts. The more love we get, the more episodes we can create. Alrighty, get back to the show.
Hey, maybe I'll kick off our content here, our topic, instruction versus coaching, with a basic mindset I've had about instruction and what instruction is as it pertains to mountain biking. Then maybe we can use that to segue into the full topic.
Cool.
So, historically, when I think instruction, I'm thinking about teaching somebody to do something they don't know how to do. And, on a bike, whether it's learning how to wheelie or read terrain or brake well, right? We're trying to, we as the instructor are designing a progression that the end goal of that progression is to get them to do something better. Something very specific, and it's very skill oriented. It's a very, very skill based concept. And, for ages now, this is how mountain bike instruction has been, and it has evolved throughout. Think back to the days of hardtails and cantilever brakes, and, a lot of the instruction, so to speak, came from road cycling, and then that evolved into mountain bike
glory days.
Pinch the top tube with your knees when you're going downhill.
Elbows in, lean back.
Yeah, and it's evolved, and all that's been exciting, and all this is to say that instruction hasn't gone away.
No,
but it's there's a recognition, I think, that we're coming to, that instruction is part of what we do as coaches.
Yeah, that's a nice way of saying it. And I kind of to your point of like, back in the day a little bit, but when I started PMBI, like the main goal then was like people didn't really understand just how to teach the skills, or even like what were the skills. No one really had a framework or a model to analyze and break down the components of mountain biking. So from like a, industry training certification perspective, the need was very much, well, we need instructors to understand what the skills of biking are, what are the biomechanics and the physics, what are the sort of mechanical components, and then just how to teach those skills. And hence the birth of PMBI. And that's essentially what I feel like PMBI delivered to the industry in a global sense, was for the first time, like a quality skill-based system for teaching mountain bike skills. Yeah. Position and balance and gears and brakes and terrain awareness and all that kind of stuff, direction control, pressure control, and timing. So we had that skill system, and fast forward to 2025, and there's this much deeper and consistent, much more deeper and kind of consistent understanding of how we ride bikes. What are the fundamental skills? There might be some different labels for it here and there, but generally the language of like mountain bike skills instruction is it's not a hangover from road riding. People are actually teaching the right things these days. Like they're not teaching lean your weight back and don't touch the front brake, which it wasn't that long ago where we were still addressing those myths. Like it seems crazy to say, but it wasn't that long ago. And even today, we're still addressing some of those myths. Now, I actually watched a YouTube video just the other day. I won't use any names, but big name YouTube channel talking about cornering, and it's like a classic myth from the 90s. And they just filmed this video. It's kind of jaw-dropping. So we're still dealing with it a little bit, but by and large, we have this kind of understanding of what skills are, and instructors have a pretty good understanding now of how to teach those skills. So I think the next phase, the next evolution is we've got this understanding, we've got these pools. Now let's understand that instruction, like you said, is a part of what we're doing, and then that's where the coaching side comes into it.
Yeah, for sure. I think the whole YouTube phenomenon is an interesting one in terms of instruction versus coaching, because it skews heavily towards an attempt towards instructing. Like, I'm going to teach you how to do these things, follow these steps and through this sequence, and you'll learn how to do it. Yeah, like the learner's cup is empty, and the instructor has the information they're going to pour into the cup, and somehow magically, you come out on the other side and able to do it. So, for me, one of the classic examples here is the manual, like a proper down the trail, down the road, long manual at the balance point. And for most people, that's not something that can be taught, that can be instructed. Like it's nearly impossible to teach somebody how to manual. Yeah. And therefore, because there's other things that come into that besides fundamental skills. Yeah. And then there we start opening the door into coaching. When we're talking about the mental skills, like frustration, and falling back into patterns of ways of thinking and body movements, and oscillating progression or paradoxical progressions, and how to deal with that. And so there's all these other things then that we need to address if we're going to be a well-rounded mountain bike coach, that are well beyond just the fundamental skills of a position, balance point, operating the brakes. Yeah,
it's a good point to sort of bring up those performance factors, right? Like we have psychological, physical, technical, tactical, and environment and equipment. And, you could argue that an instructor tends to just focus mostly on, say, the technical and maybe the equipment a little bit. whereas a coach would be more holistic and how many different ways can I improve my rider? Well, I can improve the technical piece, there's the skills, I can improve the equipment, the bike setup, but I could also focus on the mental skills, the physical skills, maybe even the tactics, like the approach, like how are you trying to develop the skills rather than just sort of what skills are you developing? And that's a nice kind of contrast as well, like instructing versus coaching. And sometimes I like the word instructional. If you think of that word instructional, it kind of paints the image of like, here's the recipe, here's the how-to, now you go away and try it kind of thing. And although there's always two-way communication, it's definitely more instructor to student. Whereas coaching, I always feel like the word coaching implies a relationship. It's hard to coach someone in a 2-hour lesson that you've never met before. You wouldn't naturally sort of use that label for that situation, because every time I think of the word coach, I think of someone that is with you for the long term, that you have a relationship. The classic case is like a high school coach, right? Like that's your coach for the year, and at times you hate them and at times you love them, but there'll always be that sort of figurehead in your life moving forward, even if you just do 2 years of football or whatever it is. When I say football, I mean soccer. But
I knew what you meant.
Apologies to the Americans. Well, I guess and Canadians. But yeah, so I think and sometimes I like to also think of like the opposites. Like some common things out here is like instructional is recreational riders, and then coaching is competitive riders. But the reality is that doesn't stick, because you can coach people for 3 years and they can never do a competition in their life. Although it does work a lot of the time. So that's a nice way of just sort of understanding what is coaching, what is instructing, what isn't coaching, what isn't instructing, and just getting a better sense of the distinction. So recreation versus competition can work, but not always. The other one I like, what do you think about instructing versus coaching in terms of like process goals versus outcome goals, and kind of the goals that the students or the teacher is setting?
Yeah, I think, for me, it comes back to what is the motivation that's behind the goals first. And I often think about, when I work as a ski instructor, teaching a beginner one lesson, the goal is to not fall down on the snow, use the equipment and not fall down. And that goal, then we can reverse back into the process of what are the process parts to learning those things. And for us as sports instructors, the time frame with this is really important. A lot of beginner ski lessons were around these parts are an hour.
Yeah.
And you've got an hour to give them tools they need to try to have fun for the rest of the day if it's their first time.
Just 1 hour beginner ski lessons?
We do.
Oh man, you barely get time to.
We got it down.
Yeah.
well oiled. But with the system we use, my local ski mountain is pretty successful, and in an hour to get somebody sliding around and maybe even doing a wedge turn within an hour.
That's kind of cool example though, because I mean that's where that short timeline, in a way, the instructional approach is the best, because it's the efficient approach. It's like, right, listen to your instructor. They're going to tell you what to do. They'll show you it, and just kind of copy them, right? Like it's going to bang, bang, bang kind of thing.
Right. So it's very outcome driven.
Yeah.
It's very direct. I want to be able to ski down this hill with my children.
Yeah.
And then as the instructor, not a coach, but as an instructor, then I know what what pieces that need to get put into place to make that happen.
Yeah. And that's something I would say is like missing from what I see, especially on the level 4, is coaches can sometimes lose that, where they stop that instructional, that kind of direct teaching style, and they lose efficiency in their coaching sessions. They're always asking the students for their input or their questions or how do they feel, and they're always trying to create this kind of collaborative coaching teaching style. And that's awesome in a long-term coaching program. You have to do that. You have to engage the students, but there's times where it's way more efficient if for that weekly session, that time, you're just direct and you just say, hey team, I'm basically going to instruct you today on a bunch of skills, and because I want to see a change and I want to tidy it up, and it's just one Saturday and I don't want to drag this out over 3 Saturdays. So today I'm just going to be your instructor, right? And I think that's one difference with instructing versus coaching is I think coaches, it opens up the door to maybe exploring different teaching styles and when you want to be a bit more instructional and direct, or when you want to be a bit more collaborative and involve the student in the planning or the decision making. And whereas with instructing, I think there's a little less room to open up that variety, and partly because it is often more of a short-term program, like a half a day or even a 2-day program. You could argue that's just 2 days. That's still instruction, really.
Hey gang, so we'd like to take a moment here to check in and ask if you've had any donuts yet this week. Maybe you haven't and all you need is a little inspiration. Well, keep listening to the end of the show where we talk about all things sugar and delight with our featured donut of the week and see if it helps motivate you towards some healthier eating decisions. Remember, after all, donuts make you happy and happy people are healthier. All right, back to the show. Well, I think that when we learn how to teach any activity, whether it's American soccer,
that's the new name for it.
American soccer, or mountain biking or skiing or whatever. Like when you're learning to teach, you're learning to instruct because there's pretty much one model that you're using. Like you're learning one model of teaching. It's classic. Let me explain it. Watch me do it. Practice it. I'll give you some feedback.
Yeah,
it's simple. That simple classic model, and that's what you as an instructor know because it works. And then as you become more competent of an instructor, you start understanding how to use more teaching models and teaching approaches. Yeah. And then you might start to see different ways then of presenting that same material over the course of a longer period of time. But like you said, you brought out something really interesting, because I see this a lot too with different mountain bike organizations where there are coaches, but it's all collaborative. What do we want to do? And that, for me, that's a sign that a coach hasn't gone through all of the steps of knowing all the different models. And there's just like just using the simplest version or just using one comfortable version that they know. And I think a well-rounded coach knows, a handful of all the approaches, and more importantly, when to use them.
Yeah.
That's its own tactic as a coach is knowing what skill to pull out, what teaching skill to pull out to get the most out, to get not only the most, but like what is needed.
Yeah, that's it. Is it the technical piece? Like, is there something in their technique that is holding them back? Or is it the bike setup? Is it the mental component? And I think that's where we're really excited with coach education in the future is training instructors / coaches to not always automatically just go to the technical aspect, the position or the braking or whatever the skill might be. Because for a long time now, I've noticed it where by bike evolution is massive. It's rapidly growing. And so we need coaches that understand and can work with that piece of the puzzle. We need a coach that can take the bike, change the setup, and improve that student's experience, that athlete's experience. And they haven't taught any technical skills. They just have a deeper understanding of when should I actually prioritize the equipment over the technical. Or maybe the technical piece is solid and the bike setup's good, and the thing that's holding them back is perhaps it's a bit of lack of confidence, a bit of fear. Well, how can we train a coach to A, recognize that, and then B, come up with a strategy to deal with it without having to go down the road of like you need a sports psychology degree? Like, what are some practical steps that a level 1 or a level 2 coach can take to minimize fear and maximize confidence in every lesson that they do, whether it's a half day beginner clinic or whether it's a sort of a 2-day jumping camp or advanced cornering camp or something. Like, what are some practical things they can do to manage some of those mental components? But yeah, I think it all goes back to, like, I keep thinking instructing versus coaching. And the reality is it's all gray in some ways. Like, for sure, there's these distinct differences, and coaches tend to, if you break it down real quickly, it tends to be more long-term. They tend to be more holistic. It can end up being with more competitive riders. The goals are more collaborative. They have a better connection with the students because they are working long-term. And then instructing is a little bit more short-term. It is like a 2-hour, half-day, 1-day lesson, typically with more recreational riders. Typically, it's more direct teaching because we want to be efficient with the transfer of information and knowledge. But a lot of that does cross over. There's times where an instructor is coaching. They're talking about a mental piece or an equipment piece, and they're trying to support and connect with a student. There's times where a coach is instructing. The classic example you said with manuals, like if you've got a rider on your race team for a season, or maybe it's an adult program, a 10-week adult program, maybe week 5 you introduce manuals, and now all of a sudden the session on week 5 is you're literally just doing an instructor lesson and just breaking down the skills and doing this sort of very standard template of how to learn a manual. And so instructors coach, coaches instruct. But I think I always go back to, like, the best way to differentiate the two is the timeline. Just to kind of summarize the points so far, that's kind of my goal here, it all comes back to the timeline. Generally speaking, instructing is more short term, and generally speaking, coaching is more of a long-term process. And because of those differences in the timeline, that's largely what dictates why instructing is a certain way and what are the pros and cons, and then why coaching is a certain way and what are the pros and cons of that. And I think that's a good point too, because it's not about right or wrong or better or worse. It's just about, which approach fits the situation the best that you have that day, whether based on the timeline, the student, the goals, the motivation. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that another important piece of this conversation is the connectedness of the coach to the rider, and how
for sure
observant and in tune the coach is with the rider. Because I think that in any sort of skill instruction, there's some inherent influence of what we as the coach want to do, and what we want to teach them, and what we want them to be able to do, versus their point of view of what they want to do. And so how well we can connect can often translate then into how well those two things meet up. And if we're not connecting, and if we're not seeing eye to eye on those things, then we're going to have a mismatch, and probably won't have as good of a relationship and outcomes.
Totally. I think that's at the heart of it, right? Is going back to sort of similarities or differences. Like I think generally speaking, coaches are better equipped to prioritize the connection piece, the social skills, and understanding how valuable that is to then teach all the other components. If I want to improve their technique or their bike setup, the better I can relate to and connect with this person, the more they're going to open up, the more they're going to ask questions, the easier they're going to learn. Like everything kind of boils back to how well can that coach connect with the humans in front of them. And that's a huge focus of ours the last few years in instructor training. And that's definitely the fundamental piece to it for the future, I think, is getting coaches to understand what social skills are necessary to connect with all types of humans and people from different backgrounds, and why that connection piece is so important. Because I think traditionally in the past, and I've definitely been guilty of this, where you look at an instructor training system and it's like, well, I can teach someone to ride better, I can teach them to teach, but I can't really teach them to be a nice person. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're like, that's up to you to figure out how to be a nice person and like make people laugh and connect with them, right? And make them feel easy and comfortable. Like, I can't teach people skills. But I think the evolution for us, and definitely for myself, has been like, if we shine a light on something and the value of it and the importance of it, first of all, people are going to be better at teaching themselves, because we've impressed on them like, this is really important. So whether I teach you it or not, you need to be good at this, right? So I think that's one part of it. And the second part of it is there are things we can do, the things we can highlight that I think does increase that self-awareness and that can teach people skills, that can, it's not like in a weekend you're going to turn an asshole into a really nice person. Like you're not going to do that. But you can at least start planting seeds. And then I kind of think of it like your teach personality. Like, people can be who they want to be at home or, outside of work, so to speak. But when you're there that day, you're standing in front of your group and you're the coach. Like, I think a lot of coaches feel it. It's almost like your coaching personality comes in, and how can you improve that side? How can you improve that coaching personality? Because I think sometimes Shannon probably wonders, what, like, how have you taught for this long? Like, how do people listen to you? Because I'm generally quite grumpy and mumbly, but that's my alter ego, right? Like, if you have to be bouncy and fun and friendly at work, then I'm kind of maybe a little bit the opposite when I get home. But I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, just trying to get people to understand how important that social aspect of your role is, and then what we can do to help you develop that as a coach.
Good stuff. I think that my genuine opinion is that those social skills can be taught.
Yeah,
it's long term, and we have to role model them. Because I think back to all of the mentors I've had in the outdoors, be it climbing people, outward bound folks. I've learned so much about social dynamics through them, but it's taken a long time. And I think back, I can call up these people like in my brain, when something's happening, hear their voice and be like, oh yeah, this is how I need to be in this. And so I think that, we have to, as coaches, recognize that's part of our role, is to show what good social skills are in this setting.
Yeah.
How to be a good person and how to deal with all the stuff that we deal with.
Yeah.
So kind of a quick story on a bit of this connection piece and coaching, to maybe shine another light here. The fall after I completed my level 4, I was teaching here at the university a 7-week or 8-week beginner mountain bike PE class.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which I've done many of those. But this was special because I'd just done my level 4.
Right.
In level 4, you do your 10-week coaching plan, and all the stuff that we do on that. And I came into that thing fired up, of I've got my 7 or 8 week plan for these students, and I had all the stuff that I was, all the components I was going to do. And, just again, back to what I was saying about the coach's desire versus the student's desires, in terms of what they want to learn. I came in, designed it, with the best progression in mind and all that. And realized after the second week that they weren't having any fun. They were learning, they were doing these things, they weren't having any fun. Went into the third week, I'm like, you know what? We just need to go ride.
Yeah.
And I had made the decision that what was missing was community within the students and the social connections and the kind of that, let's go have fun together.
Yeah.
And, I think that's something that often gets missed about writing and coaching and instruction, is that a lot of people really value the social component of writing as much as maybe even more than the technical
Absolutely.
side of things.
Absolutely. And I think that's the big reason why, it's not the big reason, but that's one of the reasons why I think a shift towards coaching education versus instructor training is so important, because, how long have we been doing this? 20 plus years of teaching mountain biking, training instructors, seeing programs succeed or not succeed, and same thing with instructors. And, snowboarding and mountain biking, I've seen this for a long time, and it's the best instructors, they're not the best riders. They're not the best, sometimes they're not even the best teachers. They're the ones that create that experience, that sort of safe, fun, open, relaxed, inclusive atmosphere. And from that, they create the best results. And I think that's a huge reason why this sort of focus on coach education is so exciting, because apart from anything else, like I said earlier, people have a better understanding of technical skills now anyway. And that almost kind of frees us up a little bit to be like, right, if you're teaching a 2-day program or a half-day lesson or whatever it might be, what's your primary goal here? Is it to teach them how to do a roll down and fix their body position? Or is it to just make sure they have an awesome time and go home, like stoked on mountain biking? Really, it's that. And then obviously you want to do both. But generally speaking, if you prioritize the fun piece, the learning will happen anyway. For sure, because then you're probably riding enough, you're having a good time, they're relaxed enough, they're going to absorb the information better anyway. And that's just the instructor or the coach, whatever label you want to put on it. That's just them understanding the priorities here and putting the fun above the learning.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it kind of begs the question, if we want as coaches to get the best out of our riders, what is the best? Is it executing that manual for 300 yards?
Yeah. Yes, it is.
Is it well, which is pretty darn good, for sure. Is it like, landing throwing this trick on this jump? Is it racing it, finishing on the podium for the race? What is the best? And for me, one of the reminders is the rider wants to keep doing it. They want to keep progressing. And I'm doing something as a coach to help them keep so motivated and stoked about mountain biking that they want to keep doing it. So here's a little thing for you. I trained this winter. I was doing my PSIA level 1, and I trained all winter with one of our senior PSIA level 3 guys, who I've skied with for a long time, and he one of the people that like really pushes me, like in my skiing, is really like hypercritical of, everything everything. And it got to the point where like I'm like, I can't ski with you today because my cup is too full. It's too like,
Yeah.
I need to throw the cup away. So I think I forgot how to ski because I've been training so much.
That happens a lot in the winter. They get like feedback junkies and they stop just skiing.
Yeah. So anyway, I was on the lift with him one day, and I kept noticing this dude that was, he was skiing with his whole body. Thrashing his arms, his hips, and it was like it was, 1975, and he was, cover model or something, for some sort of ancient ski style. I like to philosophize with my buddy here, and this is my trainer, and I'm like, so who on the mountain is the best skier? The person that is the most technically proficient, or the person that's having the most fun?
Yeah.
And I'm like, look at that guy.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
He doesn't freaking care a bit.
Yeah.
And he's having the best time.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I think, it's always a balance, but sometimes I'll say to coaches, like, how many times have you ever heard of a rider or an athlete, a student, continuing to do a sport when they stop loving it, and that passion, or that lack of passion rather, sticks around? Like, it's very, very, unless they're getting paid millions of dollars. Even the other day, I was listening to a thing about Ricky Carmichael and Supercross, and he's often talked about how he hated racing, but he raced because he was literally earning millions of dollars, and he's one of the best in the world at it. He loved riding, but he hated racing. But outside of that, if someone doesn't have that huge extrinsic motivation, because mountain biking is such an internal sport, like you do it because you love it, and otherwise it's expensive, and it's hard. So if you're not enjoying it and you continue to not enjoy it, you are going to stop learning, and at worst you're going to stop doing it. And that's the thing. If as long as people are having fun, they'll keep learning and understanding those two pieces, and how to prioritize the learning and then prioritize the fun, and try and find that balance. Because coaching, on the flip side, coaching isn't about, hey, let's just go have a good time and we'll see if we get better. Like, it's still technical. It's still, we still got metrics and outcomes that we want to achieve. Nothing is lost from that kind of technical development perspective. It's just having that understanding of, when do we want to tone down the technical focus? When do we want to dial up the social piece, the connection piece? When do we maybe want to dial that down and have them focus on their equipment or whatever it might be, right? And I think I was saying to just my daughter the other day, it's like she's going to start racing BC Cups this year, and full on intro to kind of provincial level racing. And, the only goal is for her to have fun and enjoy it. Right. And it's going to be that way until she's about 16 or 17, because the development will always be there, and outcomes and goals will always be there. So you achieving that goal should not be your metric for success. Right. Because if you only enjoy it by achieving that goal, you'll attach the enjoyment piece to the development piece too much. You've got to enjoy the process, because the process is continuous, and there'll always be something that you can't learn. There'll always be something you can't do. So you have to learn how to love it in spite of that failure, essentially. So if you become too outcome based in a long-term program, that's where athletes, riders, students, will start to sort of measure their success based on, did I achieve skill X? Did I achieve result Y? And a good example is you look at top World Cup races today, and I think Laurie Greenland's a good example. Even Jackson Goldstone's a good example. Like Valley Hull says this. It's like, if they're not having fun, then what are they doing? What's the point, right? And they don't perform well either, right? So I think that's a sign that they, at that top tier, they have a good coach, a good support network. And even though at that point, I mean, literally their livelihood depends on them winning races. Someone like Valley or Jackson Goldstone, like they're not there ever to come second or third. I mean, if it's more important for them to win a race than literally any other mountain biker on the planet, right? But given that context, probably the overarching goal for the season is to enjoy it. And they probably don't voice that or say that, or maybe they didn't even consciously think it. They probably don't even write it down in their journals. But I guarantee you, like, if that goal isn't being met, that kind of intrinsic fun, then the training suffers, results suffer, performance suffer, right? Okay, so we just wanted to take a quick break to say thanks for listening. And if you're a rider or coach out there and you have an idea for a topic or future episode, feel free to let us know through the comments on our Instagram page @Donuts and Bikes. We're always happy to hear suggestions from our listeners on what we do or ways to make the podcast better. Thanks, team. Let's get back to the show.
Maybe as a means to wrap this up here, kind of listening to that final thought, it seems that instructors are often, or instructional pursuits are often outcome focused, and coaching is much more process focused.
I love that.
Yeah. But here's the thing that I was hearing from what you're saying in that last part is that how a coach handles addressing the process and focusing on the process becomes really critical, because when you're the student in the process, it's hard to buy into, like, this is going to pay off sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes you just want the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, like, you keep hearing, well, just trust the process. Yeah. Like the coach has to be able to masterfully guide the process, in a way that feels good, feels fun, and has its own rewards. Like there's the intrinsic motivation, is highlighted in that, in the coach's work in the process.
Yeah, totally. And I think, like, if you think of like a pedaling wheel lift versus a wheelie, like you can take most strong novice intermediate riders that have never done one before, and you can teach them how to do a little pedaling wheel lift, pop the front wheel up over a log or something whilst you're going up a hill. You can teach them that in like 15, 20 minutes, half hour, maybe. But then you try and teach them how to wheelie. Well, now that's like 4, 5, 6 months. And technically they're very similar maneuvers, right? So in one sense, just the little pedaling wheel lift, the process is really short, so it's easy to get to the outcome. And so we get confused, the student and the instructor can kind of almost be like, well, the fun there was achieving the outcome, where there was still a lot of fun going through the process. It's just the process was so quick, it kind of got like almost sort of swept under the rug, right? Like, oh, the process wasn't really the fun bit. The fun bit was actually getting the front wheel over the log on that climb, right? But then in coaching, like teaching the wheelie, that process is such a long time frame now, and the outcome is so much harder that you're kind of forced to prioritize. Okay, let's try and enjoy the process here, because if we try and just get fun out of the outcome, this process is going to suck really quickly, because we're not going to achieve the outcome for a long time now.
But the main difference between the pedal wheel lift and the wheelie is confidence.
That's a big piece of it, right?
But that's one of the main things that separates the two, besides like the balance point and all that. But you can't teach. Well, we'll go into this in a future episode about how do you teach confidence, because there is, I think there is steps, but we'll go into it later. But it's a coaching progression.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and that's the thing when I see, like, what are some things that hold back? I've trained certified thousands of instructors over the years, all the way from new instructors to level 4s and people that have been coaching national race teams, border cross teams, Olympic teams. Like I've trained such a crazy spectrum of instructors and coaches, and one of the common kind of traps I see instructors and coaches fall into is, the common ones would be trying to fix something purely with the technique, not knowing how to address the mental components, not recognizing that the equipment is actually having a bigger impact on their riding than, say, the technique or the tactic or something else. They're not casting their awareness wide enough in terms of how can I help this student, how can I help this rider, and I think to sort of, like you said, kind of wrap it up. But I think potentially another way of defining instructing versus coaching is a coach will have a wider net and maybe a few more options to develop a student, whether it's in a 3-hour lesson or a 3-month program, whereas the instructor is a little bit more focused in on sort of one or two of those components. And again, it's not right or wrong, better or worse. It's just, I think from our perspective as from a organization that's training, certifying coaches with a global syndicate, like that's where I'm coming at it from with this podcast. It's like, I'm looking through that lens of like, we've got this future of training the next generation of mountain bike coaches and looking at the current state of the sport and what does the sport need from its mountain bike coaches today, and where are we going and what will they need in the future. So yeah, it's exciting times. It's things like, a good example, I was listening to a podcast the other day about Reese Wilson's new Aon team and the gearbox belt drive bikes and the new Atherton belt drive bike. And I'd love to do a podcast on that. We'll do a podcast on those soon. But, that's just a good example of like the bikes are continuing to evolve. They're so exciting. And then how does that change riding? How does that change coaching? Does it? If so, how? Like, that's partly why I think we're still doing this after all these years, is it's never boring. We're never stuck with the same thing. That's why I love coaching. It's like, yeah, we've done it for a long time, but I don't think I've ever had a year where it felt exactly the same as the year before. Like every year is an evolution, like personally or professionally in some regard, right? And dirt bikes too. We should do a podcast on dirt bikes, because I went dirt biking for the first time the other day with my kids, and it was ridiculously fun. And now I'm trying to figure out who to sell or which child to keep so I can go buy a dirt bike. But maybe I'll sell the dog.
Oh no! All right. Hey, have you had any donuts?
Yes, I had a. Well, do you have a donut? Because you always have really good donuts. I feel like you eat more donuts than me. I've been quite good lately.
I've been pretty good. Pretty good.
We need to get back on the donut bandwagon a little bit. No, we were in Bellingham the other day and just went down to see Transition and right down there for a couple of days. And We what's the name of the place? I can't remember. I put it on Instagram, but
You sent me a photo.
Yeah.
What was that?
They do these warm donuts at like 10 o'clock at night. So they make like 1,000 donuts but they make them really late in the afternoon and evening, I guess, ready for the next day. So we went in there and I got some fresh donut. It's nothing like a fresh donut. You can have like the most boring plain donut, but I just had a classic glazed donut.
That's
and then
the best. Yeah.
So good when they come out of the oven. And then we had these like chocolate, it was like a chocolate bear claw. It's basically like a giant bear claw. So I like apple, cinnamon, whatever, but with a layer of chocolate on the top, which I've never seen before.
Yeah, I haven't seen that.
Oh, so good. Because it's kind of like two donuts in one, right? Like it's
right.
Am I eating a chocolate donut? Am I eating a bear claw? Yeah, like an apple fritter kind of thing. Oh man, it was so good.
All right, that brings us to the end of another episode of Donuts and Bikes. We hope this conversation elevated your understanding of coaching versus instruction from either a rider's or a coach's perspective. We like to think that riding bikes isn't rocket science. It's really more about pros and cons than rights and wrongs. Please take care of yourself if you're using any of the information discussed in this episode. And you can find our full disclaimer at our website, the mountainbikecoachingpodcast.buzzsprout.com. Stay safe, ride smart, coach smarter, and we'll see you next time.